Colonel, today we're going to talk about the origins of Robert the Doll, who has been terrorizing the citizens and guests of Key West since 1904.
1904.
So let's get into it. First of all, the family.
The Ottos.
Yes. So this is the family that brought the doll to Key West as a gift for Robert Gene Otto, who went by Gene Otto. And when they first arrived in Key West, where did they come from?
Prussia, listed as Germany in the census.
And that's where that doll came from.
Yes.
So the doll came over from Germany, and when they first got here, that was prior to Robert being born, and they lived at 412 Francis Street.
Mm-hmm.
Now this was a rental property for them when they just got to Key West, so let's check that out. So here's the property that the Otto family lived in right before Gene Otto was born. So this is 412 Francis Street, the Heron House, which was the original Otto property prior to Gene Otto being born. But as the family gained prominence, now what provided the funding for the Otto family?
Well, they were medical doctors.
So medical doctors, and they also had a pharmacy, and they moved from that rental at 412 Francis to 534 Eaton.
Mm-hmm.
And opened a pharmacy across the street.
Right.
So why did the medical doctors want a pharmacy?
Well, in those days, medical doctors really didn't make a lot of money. And so their main income came from the pharmacies that they established.
Yeah, and of course, Gene Otto was born right after they moved to 534 Eaton Street, and shortly thereafter, Robert the Doll showed up.
Yes.
So let's check out 534 Eaton Street, which is now known today as...
The Artist House.
There it is. So Robert the Doll spent most of his time at 534 Eaton Street, and that is the house the Otto family moved into when Gene was born. So this is where a lot of the stuff happened. You can see there's the turret on the third floor. Now it was not purple and gray when the Ottos owned it. It had hues of green. He loved green, and it is called the Artist House. You can see that. And this is the property. You can see the upper porch. But that turret is where Robert would be seen in the window. You can see back at the property. That's where Robert was. So he would always be seen in that window. Now, the family were medical doctors, and back then medical doctors didn't make a lot of money because they were always trading stuff to treat people. So a lot of them also ran a pharmacy. So the Otto family had a pharmacy right across the street from the house. So this is where the pharmacy was, right here. So that time in that house was pretty interesting. And what did the residents of Key West start to notice?
Well, that Robert the Doll would hang out at the windows in the turret of the house and move from window to window. You could say the legend goes, but they were pretty sure that was going on in those days.
So Robert was this 4-foot doll, and it was Gene Otto's best friend. Him and this doll kind of did everything together, and of course, whenever something went wrong and they looked to Gene for doing it, what did Gene say?
Robert did it.
So that doll had a life of his own.
And that got to be a common statement in all of Key West. Everybody was running around saying, Robert did it.
I didn't
do it. Robert did it.
Yeah. So eventually Gene Otto dies, and he ends up in the cemetery, which we'll show you in a minute. But prior to that, after Gene Otto died and the family sold the property, Robert the doll continued to live there with the Reuter family.
Mm-hmm.
And they lived there for quite a while. A friend of the Reuters bought the house so she could live there. Mrs. Reuter could live there. Eventually, the owner sold it and she moved to a different property. But here is Gene Otto's final resting place. Colonel, we found it. What do you think?
Well, it was easier. We thought it was going to be a problem, but we found it.
Otto is at Laurel Street and 2nd Avenue in the cemetery. We see all the Ottos, and there's Dr. Otto, Dr. Joe Otto. That's Dr. Joe. And remember, there was a son, Joe Otto, also. So here's Gene's sister, Mispa. This is the sister he was closest to. She's buried here. And in Gene's will, she received everything. And Gene Otto's right here on the edge. And one thing you'll notice is that his Yorkshire Terriers are buried with him. Now the Otto family was really involved in St. Paul's Episcopal Church, located right at the corner of Duval and Eaton. And I'm wondering if they didn't spend time there to try to break the curse from Robert the doll. So in the obituary, it talked about the Otto contributions to St. Paul's Church. So one of the interesting things we noticed, and maybe you did too in the video, is that Gene's wife is not buried next to him in the cemetery. It's an empty spot.
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
Well, there was a falling out, and she did not get any money in the will.
Yeah, Gene cut her out of the will because her mother cut Gene out of her will.
Okay.
So that was kind of like nasty, but a payback. So she's actually buried up in the New England states. She had moved with her sister when she got cut out from everything. But we're focusing on Robert the doll. And Robert moved from 534 Eaton when it was sold to Von Pfister Street.
Yeah.
A little bit of a different environment than what he was used to.
Mm-hmm.
That might have irritated him on why he started putting so many curses on people.
Yeah.
So that property on Von Pfister Street was much smaller. It was an apartment that was half of a house. So remember what the house looked like on 534 Eaton, and now this is where Robert the doll moved to. So the Reuter family took care of Robert the doll after the Otto home was sold, and they lived at 1722A Von Pfister. So here's the home that Robert stayed in for a number of years. And here you can see 1722A on this side, and then 1722, the main home, was right here. So it was a rather small property, but a nice courtyard over there. And you can see the entranceway to 1722A. So Robert got moved around a little bit before he got to his final destination. And eventually, the doll had to go.
Mm-hmm.
It was creating too many problems for the owner. So where did she take it?
To a museum.
The Fort East Martello Museum, which is on Roosevelt Boulevard, right out by the airport
Yeah.
on the Atlantic Ocean. And he is now prominently displayed there, but it wasn't always the case after he was given to the museum.
No, the staff was more or less afraid of him, and they kept him in some sort of a crate device. So he wasn't on display. You had to ask to have him shown to you, and some of the employees wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
They'd say, come back later when so-and-so's working, they'll show you.
But he now is there, and in the museum, he's in a protective glass case.
Yeah. Plexiglass.
Yeah. It says it's to protect Robert. I'm not so sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might be to protect the people looking at him. And you must ask for his permission to take his picture, or you will be cursed. So let's take a look at the current residence of Robert the doll. There's Robert.
Yeah, take your picture.
You don't want that curse on you.
No.
I think we'll be okay because we did ask for permission to take his picture. So now you know where Robert is, and you know you have to get his permission to take his picture. And we're gonna give you some examples of why. If you take his picture and don't ask for permission, there's a strong likelihood you're gonna be cursed. Listen to this letter from someone who wrote to Robert.
Hello, Robert. In early September last year, my family and I visited you in Key West for the holiday weekend. We heard stories of you and decided to pay our respects to you on our way out of town. We asked for your permission to take your picture, and nothing strange happened. And although we didn't voice our doubts out loud, perhaps you could sense that we were not real believers. Well, it has been about 6 to 7 months since our visit, and since then my life has been one nightmare after another. Within a couple of weeks of returning home, it started with my kitten suddenly dying, my bank account being fraudulently used twice, losing a substantial amount of money, having my bird die, my son falling and fracturing his skull, the hotel we stayed in on vacation set on fire, lost my job and now on the verge being laid off from my new job, being forced out of my home, and my husband and I have separated. I've been debating on writing this letter for weeks, but I'm now at the point where I'm desperate. I truly believe in you and the power you possess, and kindly ask you remove anything negative surrounding me and my family and give us your blessings. I have removed the pictures that I have taken of you from Facebook. Thank you.
If you're interested in learning more about Robert and you want to visit him, you might want to pick up Robert the Doll, the book by David Sloan. So this book has the stories of Robert, and there also are some tours you can do to get into more, but there are plenty of additional stories and letters that you can read regarding Robert's power. You do not want to cross Robert. Hey, if you found this video interesting or it helped you, consider subscribing to the channel. It's free. It does help me out a lot. Also, ring the bell and you'll be notified every time I put up a new video. And give the video a thumbs up. That helps it reach a wider audience. But more important than all that,
go have some fun out there.
hey, thanks for watching.